So I have discovered in working on this paper, on a paper where they basically were like, I would like evidence for this claim. And I was like, but that's just true. And the reviewer was like, we agree, find some evidence. Turns out there's not any. If I just want to deploy some type of survey at the start of probably at least every one of my 205 classes for probably the next 2 years. That's essentially some version of like, give me a timeline of American history from 1865
so you have
to
some
1960.
artifacts.
So I just have, right? And I'm kind of interested in having them do some where it's like some would be answering a question and some would be actually like, draw me a timeline. I'm curious what comes out of your brain if you try to actually do this.
Yep.
Do I need to renew that every year? Or can I do a sort of like, I plan to and tell you exactly what classes I'm doing it in? Or can it be like all 200 and 300 level classes for which race is not explicitly a topic in the course, I will be deploying this thing?
Yes. So the subject pool is not really important. What's important is that you have the materials that you're going to be given them approved.
Okay.
And that would need to be done annually.
Okay.
But it will take you literally 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, the Bodas Vigo stuff, Dave Bozak approved in 6 hours.
Yeah, it's our IRB, like it could be like other institutions have done it, the IRB
right,
is
yes. And that's what I'm used to at University of Washington, it being like,
oh yeah,
insane.
It's like a 30-page submission for a survey. Like,
yes, to do I want to ask students not, like, this is not about their, right, like I would want to know like race and potentially like racial composition of, like if you had to guess the racial composition of your high school, I'd probably ask a set of those questions.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be personal opinions. It would be like, what do you think this timeline looks like?
And the big thing then is also when you ask them for that, if you want to use it as data, you have to get informed consent.
Yes, so I would be doing it. I mean, I think my plan would be to do it like the second day of class, right? Like it would be really
But just so like when you give the survey, you basically get them before they do that. They read a little thing that says this has been used in a study. If you don't want to participate, it's absolutely fine. It has no impact on your grade.
Yeah. But this is basically just a like, Dr. Wright's collecting data to see what students bring to the classroom about whatever.
And technically a debriefing after we told them why you want it.
After they complete the survey.
Yeah, but you can do that whenever you want.
Yes.
Right? So that could wait until the end of the semester and I have them basically do it again.
And then you show,
and then you do a like, hey, look at.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And because then I can get a sense of like in different courses.
Yes.
What
that's
like,
exactly it. Yeah. So before they do the first part of it, you do an informed consent. And then you might, just to be on the safe side, though actually I wouldn't worry about it. Like then if you do another follow-up later, depending if it's far enough apart, it might be worth just doing giving exactly the same thing with the exact same informed consent.
Yeah.
And do it again.
Oh, the same informed consent.
Yeah.
Okay.
To say, so that they're aware that this is something.
Yeah.
So they're not being
that would make sense.
Right. Yeah.
So I believe. So the other thing that's happening is I think the rules are changing very slightly in the future to make things like this a lot easier.
Okay.
So that you wouldn't
give a sense as to like how they might change.
So that things like this, where if you do like if you're using materials in a class, would be considered kind of public domain as long as it's not FERPA protected or something.
Oh, okay.
But Zach mentioned that in passing.
That would be like
that would be
so much easier.
Yeah, because they're from their class. Like presumably we're all trying to continue to be better teachers.
Yeah.
And like presumably that's our job to be doing that.
Well, we just want to make sure they're not being coerced. That's really important.
Yeah.
That they're not being like your grade depends on you giving me the right data, like that kind of stuff. Like,
right. I mean that makes sense.
So,
but yeah, like you should be like it would make sense if you could go back and do like a content analysis of some essays that were without having to tell them that like I'm collecting these essays, because then I actually think that changes.
Right.
Like it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
There'd be issues for sure.
Yeah. Because this is the part about the one I want to do that I think potentially gets tricky is that I would de-identify it for the research, but I don't actually initially want them de-identified because I want to give them back, right? Like I want them to do the post-test and I would give everybody back their pre-test, right? Because that's like the learning experience of it is that I want them to actually see their pre-test.
Well, it's a weird thing, I think, in learning and teaching where you can maintain multiple instances where there's an instance that is being used for the research and an instance that is being used for the course.
Yeah.
And one is de-identified and stored long term, and the other one is stored in, it's identifiable, but it's stored in a way because it's not in the research context.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I was like, I don't know how to write that up, right?
It's potentially sketchy, but it's such a minor thing. As long as you got their consent, I think it's okay.
Okay, it's like I will de-identify this before I use it for anything.
I think the protections,
and it doesn't count for a grade.
The protections offered by the paper, by the whatever system that you
Actually, you can do it. Can you do it like that? There's two different things in Blackboard. Like there's surveys, and there's
surveys are anonymous.
Yeah, so surveys are anonymous. You can do something that's actually anonymous. But
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I did it. I was like, why can't I do a non-anonymous survey?
Yeah.
I don't think I want it because I think, and I haven't. I mean, this is again a thing that I started thinking about 3 weeks ago, and I was like, nobody's got time for that. That seems like an August problem.
Yeah.
But I think I want to be able to do paired t-tests, right? So I can't actually totally
you do want
de-identify.
And that's so
at that stage, right?
And so the idea would be by the end of the study, when you have those pairs,
then I take
then you would label them as person subject 1, 2, 3, and they're the whatever scale you're using or whatever that associated with, that would be associated with their name and when it's published.
Yeah.
Or shared.
Right, or a year from then when I actually have enough data to do something with it.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be fine. Okay. We had an issue with that where someone forgot to get informed consent, or someone forgot to collect. We actually mentioned in our discussion because they basically they had 2 sections of a class that we were using, and they basically just forgot to collect either the first or the second one. I think they just forgot to collect the post test. And they're like, oops.
Nope.
That was it. One question.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. So one is, if you're doing something that is generated in class, like websites that are then public, and then I wait and then do a content analysis of these public websites that are still there, is that a thing? Do I need to do?
I think you could, if they're being made public as part of the class.
Yeah. Is that coercion somehow?
That's tricky. That's
you're
really
requiring them to be.
But it's a skill set that's necessary.
Yeah.
But then they're public. They can take them down.
Yes.
As soon as they're graded, they can
that seems like as long as you make it clear that they have the right to take it down.
Yes.
Right. So then anything they've left up after
as long as you still obtain consent. The thing is, I think
does it have to be consent?
I don't think because it's public.
It's public. It's not in the public domain, but it's public.
It is publicly available information.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's protected.
That's what I was thinking.
And it's not necessarily identifiable.
I mean,
they
have their names on the bottom, but
But they have the option to de-identify and remove it.
They could whenever they want. As soon as it's graded, they can do whatever they want.
So I think the maybe courteous thing to do would be to tell them that you're going to be doing that, and that if they don't want it to be part of the study, that they should take it down or make it, not publicly available.
That would be complicated for them because most of them would be using it in their portfolio.
Yeah. Because the other thing, that would be interesting because I think you could do that even with, I bet if you just Googled portfolios for you went from university to university, you could basically get the similar sort of thing for classes.
Well, the specific thing that I want to be able to do is what I'd like to be able to do, which it might be too late to do this, is I tried something new in my classes related to some empathy things, and what I wanted to do was take a look at websites that were created in this iteration of class compared to previous iterations of the class and the sites that were made, and see if there's a difference in attention to paint, how well they paid attention to audience.
I think in this case you can probably get away without having consent because it is a website.
Yeah, because it's not a paper thing, but it's out there and they're still there.
It's public, yeah.
Pass grading.
Pass grading, yeah. It's not. There's no way you can coerce them. Yeah, there's no. Yeah, it's public. It's public. It's like if if someone.
They could have chosen not to make it public and taken the 5 points too. The thing was
It doesn't have to remain once the grade is in. It doesn't have to remain.
Correct. So, semester's over.
Yeah. I would say, especially after the semester, it's absolutely fine. Then you could, because people scrape websites all the time. use it for various shenanigans. Twitter gets great. Like, it's like
so
Twitter
that wouldn't require
Yeah.
IRB approval or anything
No,
because it's just a
public
thing that's already
domain.
out there.
It's like a public archive. Like,
So that's like any website that's publicly available, like I can do the same thing on
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Not really criticizing the people as much as like what the method may
Right.
have caused them to do.
Right. Yes. That would be my guess. Is I think it would be okay. I don't think you would even need IRB approval for that.
My concern then would be like if I started putting screenshots or something into some sort of analysis.
As long as you cite it, it's fine. Because you just cite it as that website.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it because they're I mean, I guess it's a critique of students. But
Yeah.
I feel okay about like critiquing professionals, but then it gets a little weird about former students. But it's not really a critique of them so much as like a critique of like how we teach them.
Right. Interesting.
These are my complicated questions.
That is a complicated question. But I think it's actually that's the easy one. That's the
Okay.
way. I think you should just go. Yeah. That would be. I think that's pretty close to. That's basically public domain. If it's a website, it's public domain. Publicly available.
Yeah, which is different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my second question, which is related. Actually, I have like a few questions.
No, it's fine.
So there's another question about.
That's better than expected. I was expecting just to be sitting here like.
I'm not really from a discipline that like does IRB, so this is why I'm like it's all kind of foreign to me. I mean I've done it before, but I can like follow directions.
Right, exactly. That's the thing.
I'm capable of following directions. I'm really good at that. So I want to continue studying the empathy. I mentioned this before in another session. That
Yes.
about like the empathy stuff and doing like a pre-test and post-test. And I want to collect data, maybe some sort of like, I'm going to find some sort of something that already exists.
Right.
But if I collect that and I say like, I'm trying to find out if you like are empathetic, like I think that could be problematic for the whole class.
Yeah.
So like, how do you frame something so that it crosses all of the T's and dots all the I's, but like doesn't impact the data that you're collecting?
That's the sort of rub with human subjects. Like the question is, what can you do that's not going to affect the data you're collecting? I don't know.
But this is
the thing is like I want to know.
You can do that. This would fall under the like safe deception.
Yeah, but you're withholding information, but you're not.
It's not
It's
information
not deception.
that can harm them.
Right.
Yeah.
You're withholding information. Yeah, it's not going to cause harm.
Right.
So you would need to basically just explain it, that what's being withheld in the IRB.
Right.
And then make sure there's a appropriate debriefing. That after the fact you tell them, okay, here's what was going on.
Okay. So like at the beginning of the semester, we'd use some sort of measuring scale about like empathy.
Yeah.
We do this project. They're going to do some reflection and whatever, and then they do the scale thing again, and then after that, I could tell them like why we were actually doing it.
Exactly.
But similar to like what you were asking, sort of.
Yeah.
So in the informed consent, then.
Yep.
Like, what do you tell them?
Tell them that, there's tons of examples.
I mean, I know what an informed consent looks like, but
Yeah.
usually you say like what you're collecting data on and why.
Yeah.
But if I'm not,
all you have to say is I'm collecting data in order to examine the impact of this course on your skills as a designer.
Okay, I gotcha.
Then the debriefing, you elaborate basically.
And if you really want to embed the empathy stuff, you just put a bunch of other stuff around, right?
But you don't need to disclose that.
But you don't need to disclose it.
The scale might literally tip the scale. Basically, the scale might tip it off.
Like might reveal. It depends what I find.
Right. Yeah. This is right. Like if your questions are only empathy questions,
right?
They'll figure out what's happening.
So I have to put in some other
So
stuff.
you put in a bunch of other stuff.
I got
But you may want to use there are also scales. There are designed and validated scales that you probably use something like that rather than roll your own, because rolling your own is tricky.
But you get a scale that already exists, but then you mix in some of your own questions that you're.
It should have some already mixed in.
Okay.
And then you may.
But the issue is going to be that the thing won't be about design.
Right.
Or even about audience, which like would be more broadly like applicable.
But are there surveys?
There's
for
stuff about
audience?
I don't think so. When I was looking into it, but maybe I can look at that specific thing.
Right? Or you might be in a position where you actually just need to like find well-established surveys and then do some combo work.
I mean, you can roll your own. It's just there is a danger.
I definitely don't want to do that on the MVP stuff because I don't have the skill set to do that.
Yeah.
I could write questions about design and other things that like could mimic the scale that I could mix in maybe, but
and that might be a good distractor from that.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
It would be a distractor that I wouldn't use for anything. It's like this isn't data. Like this is just not usable data.
But yeah, because designing scales is tricky business, and then validating them and make sure that there's measured, assessing reliability and stuff like that. There's statistics for it, stuff like that.
This is why I've limited all of the Photos ones from other things.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I've done one previously for service learning that like we use an existing scale.
Yeah.
So I've done that before, but in that case it made sense. Like the scale we were using, like it was fine to just use it. Yeah. But this particular thing, from the initial work that I've done, and I'm planning to spend the summer like really thinking this through, it looks like most of the scales are more in this like a different
individual
realm.
empathy, because it's
like in a different realm.
Yeah, assessing psychopathy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just not really. I think we're here.
No.
You're looking. There's not stuff in like UI design that worries about audience.
There's stuff not about your ability to like. I don't think so. I can dig around in there a little bit more. Like when we were just talking, like the word audience like popped in my head that like maybe that's a realm I should be looking at. But there's a difference between like identifying an audience or something like that and being empathetic towards your. And I want to be able to separate the difference between being empathetic and sympathetic. Because I've had some experiences where students were definitely being sympathetic and not empathetic, and that was really problematic.
You may be down on more of like a content analysis situation
Yeah.
to hand. Like that seems
That's gonna be
tricky to get on a
I don't know if
pretest
scale's
post-test.
gonna get that.
Well, you can get it on a pretest post-test, but not on a numerical pretest post-test.
Yeah.
I should say.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some things that I could do to get just some general information.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think whatever I do will have to include a content analysis of the websites.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if you can do if you can do a content analysis on some pre-test questions that aren't a scale, that would get that sort of sympathy empathy distinction.
Yeah. The problem is like where I've had those issues, like I'm definitely not going to use those methods because it, I think, encourages instead of empathy, and I don't really want to cause that damage.
Where you've done the pre-test, like
I haven't done a pre-test, but I've done a different method. Like teaching
so you want to compare the method, right?
I don't really want to compare the method because I know the other method is problematic.
Okay.
Right, like I don't want to introduce it because I know, like, ethically, I find that problematic.
But you want to account for it in the pre-test because you don't, right? Like you don't know if the next method might make it.
I have a hunch because I've already done the other method.
Sure, but you want to be able to demonstrate, right? Like this falls into the, like I agree, don't reteach the stuff that you think did a problematic thing, right? That's why like the best comparison from what else we do is me teaching a class in an election year that's about campaigns and elections where they don't do any voter registration, which I will not do because that seems terrible, right? Fine. But setting up the sort of like, in a pre-test, do you get indicators that students are inclined to be sympathetic rather than empathetic?
I think it would be
like that's
inclined to be neither.
Okay, right. So you think it's inclined to be neither, but wouldn't it be interesting if you did it a couple times and you had like a set of inclined to be neither, a set of inclined towards sympathetic over empathetic, and a set of empathetic over sympathetic, and then are there differences in the post-test for those three groups of students? Right, you want to be able to identify. And I think that you could get to on some open-ended questions.
This is basically the project that I've been doing, the fairy tale project, right? The difference between doing like simulations on their own which I think cause people to be sympathetic.
Okay.
Versus using this like fictional world, which I think has caused them to be more, it's definitely not sympathy that they're demonstrating, it's something different. So I'm curious about what I would do at the beginning. We could certainly do a first project where like I'm just not talking about it all and see whether or not what happens. Basically, my hunch would be like my hypothesis would be that students would design for themselves.
Right. Right. The other option would be there have to be other folks who do not feel that it is a problem to use simulations.
Yes.
Can you get, right? Like the other option is to pair up with somebody.
True. The other problem though is that there are very few design faculty who are addressing accessibility issues at all in the curricula. And I'm trying to make an argument for doing so and doing so in a particular kind of way. It is more persuasive. I'd like some evidence, but at the same time, like it would probably be more of a persuasive sort of piece, because I don't think it can get, like my sample size is too small.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of things there that like make it messy and problematic. But I think there is some things that I can do, and I can use my previous students and my previous projects where I use that other method as a way to demonstrate that in the final content. Yeah. So I'm not sure if just doing the content analysis is a thing between the years, or if there's something about, I could do like something at the beginning of the semester, at the end of the semester, or a combination of those things. But I'm still like really early on and like figuring out what to do, but it's like simmering, and I've had these other conversations with folks, and I'm really realizing that like other people really aren't doing this work like at all. Yeah. So there's not there's not a lot of room for some of this other stuff. Yeah. And there's data about using those same kinds of simulations in a different context than them like being useful. Yeah. And I don't think actually they're not useful, but I think they need to be paired with something else. Right. For them to be useful and not be more like sympathetic. Yeah. Interesting. Part of it too is just like this is not really like these questions, like they're important to my field, but they're not really like things that my field's right. Yeah. So I need to find a collaborator of some sort ultimately, but I need to have some sort of like clearer idea of what I'm doing. But I wanted to figure out where all the like problems are. So here's my last question, which is related but somewhat different. I'm applying for this grant through an organization called Teach Access that is about developing accessibility related curricula. And they require doing a pre and post test. However, I don't have access to the pre and post test yet. So my question is, if they develop the pre-post and I just need to deploy it in our classes, like where does that go through approval? So you would still it's sort of like since you'd be using their materials, you just need to submit those materials with your IRB. Okay. And that would be fine. It's the source of the materials isn't really important as far as IRB as much as the content. I guess my question is like I would still need to do IRB even if they did IRB at their institution where they developed the thing. Yes. Okay. Yes. That was the bigger question. Yeah. But unlike other places where that gets tricky, I have to imagine here it'll be like, okay. They'll be like, fine. It's not the thing itself. I don't imagine would be. It's like, can you do these things? No, you don't know what these things are? Great. Can you do them now? You can? Great. Or not. Yeah. Oh, that's a cool phrase. Psychospatial distances. Family, friend, peer, distant other, and species empathy. Species empathy. My project that I've been doing is related to the Three Little Pigs, and they're designing a website for an audience that doesn't really exist. So they are designing stuff that like works across species. Across species, interesting. Which is why I thought that was funny.
You are not alone.
Where is this place that you're in?
So this is
that I've never seen before.
this is the psych tests database of the library.
Oh.
So these are all measures that we have access to.
Uh-huh.
And they are in general, like, so there's a narrative questionnaire. Let's see.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so 2 distinct aspects of empathy-related response to pressure and sympathy. Measures administered following the reading of 2 newly created narratives, first person description, 8 language feelings. Sympathy, the ability to take the perspective of the writer, adapt from perspective taking subscale of the empathy scales by Davis. So that might be a good place to start, actually. Nice simple 8-item with 3 of them being sympathy and 4 of them being.
Right. I just have to look at them to see whether or not they can apply to. I need to get my
Sorry. This is your computer.
This whole session turned into like, so we have projects.
Yeah. That's fine with me.
And that's
Good use of time,
like,
right?
I don't want to say, like, I've been through this session and basically
Oh,
the end was like,
human sparrow interactions. What? Oh,
sparrow means something different than I
don't
think
know.
sparrow means.
I want to know now.
No interspecies interaction. I think it means what we think it means.
like sparrows.
Towards
like
native
birds.
Songbirds and
songbirds.
house sparrows.
I am not empathetic toward birds. I would not pass that test.
They're invasive. About them being invasive or not. Wow, that's crazy.
The things people want to know.
Yeah.
Empathetic responses.
Empathic. Which might be different than empathetic. I don't know.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I would have to look that up.
No.
But you should be able to, for most of these, like you can click on it and get the actual scale.
And we have
And we
these.
have licensed, like, or we have access to them.
How do we get into this?
If you go, it took me, like, I was in the library, but if you go to the list of databases and stuff in the library, and then down, it's called psych tests.
Psych tests.
Sorry, you.
Thank you. It's very helpful. Then of course I'll collect the data and be like, I don't know what to do with this. Step 2. Come from a land of more like
Schadenfreude.
Yes.
Form.
Dark triad personality traits and the experience. Your field has too much math for me. But
This
it's
is
super
not
fun.
my. This is.
All right, psych has too much math for me, but it's super fun.
This is so far. That looks interesting too, because it definitely does. It's distinguishing between empathy and sympathy.
right. How funny your shit on the situation. That's very
Interesting. And a lot of these, this is the nice thing about these, that they're mostly fairly high reliability, or they may not. I don't know. Some of them are validated, some of them are not. But perspective taking questionnaires. Yeah, I would say some of them have here. You can go directly to the test they have included.
Oh, okay. What's your specific area?
I do like memory and search behavior and stuff like that. So this is all sort of.
What kind of memory stuff? I mean,
like structural, like how free. So the main task that I use is sort of search of memory. Like how do you find specific things in memory, and how are those things done? And what does that tell us about how our memories are structured?
Do you do stuff about like memory loss and?
To some extent, I'd like to, but it's the subject to participant, the right people. For a dissertation, I did some people from a adult living, like a old folks home, and it did not go well. Like they were not into what I was doing. Like what undergrads will put up with and what old people will put up with is a very different set of things. Like, because I was trying to do like temporal, like extended time stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but having them sit there for 20 minutes naming stuff, they were like, I'm done. And then they just like walk out. And so
they've earned that right.
They have, yes. And then also,
I do a lot of work actually with older adults.
No. Okay. Yeah, but they get I also got a lot of so one of the things I was doing is looking at animals versus mammals for a recall task. So name all the animals you can, and then name all the mammals you can, and then do, vice versa. But there were a couple times where I would say, okay, we're gonna do mammals, and then do animals, and they'd be like, that's the same thing, I'm not doing it. And they'd be like, okay, thank you for participating. Like, so
that's awesome.
It was very, very interesting experience, and I didn't get to use the data in my ghost because it ran out of time, but it would be cool to do. So we did some with this semester. We did some bilingual bits.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so there's some interesting cultural stuff that starts to seep into, like we do food, like the food items that you get in different languages are completely different and stuff. And so that's something to explore. But I'm trying to mostly get students to actually do the research and that. So it's it depends on me having a bilingual or someone who's interested in that. And so that's interesting. And that kind of perception and bias and decision making stuff, like the Monty Hall task. The show Let's Make a Deal?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end there's 3 doors, right?
Yeah.
And you pick a door. And Monty Hall says, okay, this door in the middle, or whoever it is now says this door in the middle is not the prize. Do you want to stay or switch?
Right.
People like to stay. Our tendency is to stay. We believe that staying is at least as good. There's social reasons, there's cognitive reasons, there's all kinds of reasons for it, but it's always better to switch, like mathematically. And so one of the things we've been doing is changing the number of doors. So if you have 10 doors and you pick a door, and then Monty Hall says, these 8 doors are the wrong answer.
And then you're down to 2.
Do you want to stay with this one that you chose when there was 10, or do you want to switch to the new one? And it's the odds of it become much more obvious once you start staying and switching. And so we're trying to figure out why people do staying and switching and stuff like that. And the math behind it's actually really cool. So
that's interesting.
And then just other sort of freeform stuff we're doing now is the puzzle solver, search behavior, and like naturalistic tasks like jigsaw puzzles and Lego building and stuff like that. So we're using the eye tracking to do that.
That's pretty interesting.
So we have to figure out how to analyze the data now, which is the trickier part. But I
got the data.
Yeah, got the data, and then we figure out what does it mean? What can we say with it?
Interesting. I make websites.
We teach people how to make websites, which is a lot trickier, I think, than.
Yeah, actually do a lot more teaching of websites than making of websites.
Well, the way that standards and stuff like that move, like I'm still back in like the days of like PHP 3 is when last time I designed a website, legitimately. But
yeah, it takes a lot to stay. But I do have this project that is going to be in its 2nd year that I've done with Mike in the gallery called Recollections. The first time we did it was about Alzheimer's and memory loss.
Nice.
So we did some storytelling.
There's one of those banners up there, right?
There was before Tyler was renovated, the show was in Tyler.
Okay.
And then it traveled to multiple adult care facilities.
Oh, nice.
It wasn't designed to do that, so we had to adapt it to do that. So we got funding to do another round with the idea that it would be in adult care facilities from the beginning, and develop like trade show, like things that can collapse and be modular and like spread out throughout the facility so that the exhibit can go to them. And we're developing That's why I was asking if you do stuff related to memory. So we're designing a storytelling workshop to do with adult care facility residents and their families about mementos that they've stored, like kept, and like why, and like what significance does it have. And we're playing around with the idea of having them bring something that represents their past and something that represents their present, and collecting some of those stories, and then my students will take like that information and design some experiences around it.
I'd be curious to see, like, I wonder, because that's one of the fascinating things. One of the issues with studying memory is that it's so subjective and such a moving target. Like it's, getting control.
No.
Getting control, like getting an appropriate control. Like you can, if I want to manipulate perception, I can structure the environment, and it's really there's not that much difference in terms of someone's history. But memory, it's, like I did when I was doing food, I had a study where I did they named food items for an hour. And there are people still caught, they cooked up like almost 1,000 items in some people's cases. And so, but there were these sequences in there where they would do a rapid burst of things. And it seemed like completely unrelated.
Trigger something.
Yeah, but it would seem like it was completely unrelated items. Like from an objective standpoint.
But it's like a meal bait or something.
But I was like, no, that's what we had for dinner last week. Like that's a meal that we had last week. Like there's a specific, kind of thing like that. And sort of like, even in animals, if you do, lion, tiger,
bear.
Right? But lion, tiger, leopard, also, those, lion, tiger, bear is a very common sequence that we see.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, how do we capture that kind of, that complexity is what I want to understand, and it's these kind of
with animals, they'd be like, do you have children?
Yeah. It's a factor. And then and I had a bio major come in, and he cranked out like 300 items. Like it was just crazy. Like he's like giving Latin names for things. I'm like, okay, so
it's nice.
What do we? Well, it is, but because it's interesting. It's like
what are the assumptions that you have
about? And so, like the structure of knowledge is the ways that we have to get at it.
Yeah.
And then like these kind of like experiential memories, like there are things there, like there are episodes from childhood that we remember like very, very vividly and very, very specifically, and then other things where you could be like, like just huge gaps where there's
they'll
not
be like, oh, I remember about 5 things about my childhood. Must be one that was like 5 days long.
And so there's some interesting how that sort of kind of event structure is reflected in our memory and stuff like that. There's some cool, like the math of that is actually kind of cool too. Like the structure of how events happen in the world has a certain structure, and then is that structure reflected in our memory? Does that help us remember things?
It'll be interesting, like during this project, because we're gonna do with families, and pretty like coherent individuals in one session. And then in the afternoon session, it'll actually be people with memory loss. And then we're going to do it at 5 different organizations.
So if you had them bring an item that was, sort of important memento for them, and then I wonder if you could get them to bring something related to a historical event, and see if how their narratives and how the way that they kind of talked about those.
We're interested too in seeing if the stories, like if let's say grandma brings something, and then there's like a small child, like what they would say about it, or like what their kids would like generationally, what would be different, and then between the families, because they'll have probably about 4 families at a time, whether or not there's like crosstalk about the objects because they resonate like across generations or something.
I mean, that's a super interesting question, I think, anyways, to have someone bring in something that's important to you and see what is that.
Yeah.
What kind of narrative do you get? What kind of structure do you get there?
And we know that like we're going to provide some guidelines and things to make sure that, because a lot of times like I don't know what this means. I don't know what to. So we need to like have some prompts about like kinds of things.
Examples and stuff.
But we're kind of a little bit interested. So Celie Cardone, who is a art therapist, is like working with us to do some of it. So she's gonna help design the sessions, and then my students in the experience design class, after we do let us do those stuff, we'll be working on the exhibit materials. And then one thing will be like like I'm gonna design a book that basically has like these like seemingly like mundane objects that are like treated as art objects with their stories.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if anything would come out of the textual analysis of the two different subjects, like the memory loss, not memory loss.
Yeah. I guess that leads to another question. Like for stuff like that where we're not really doing research, we're just making an art project.
Yeah. You would, if you wanted to use it, if you want to do, for example, if you want to record the their narratives about that. But if you then want to use the narratives in a study, you would need informed consent.
But not if we're just putting them in an exhibit.
But not if you're showing an exhibit, yes. As far as I know, I don't know.
I mean, that's how I've generally like treated it.
For exhibitions.
I mean, for our there is like the College Art Association, right, that has like some general guidelines about like people in exhibits and like how they might interact and being safe and not causing harm and whatever. But like historically, I have never like done those things.
This might be
the questionnaire of affect. Yeah. Yeah, actually, this is something I'm really interested in. I've been reading about these different kinds of empathy, actually. So I'm not actually sure what designers really need. Is cognitive empathy enough? I don't actually think so. But what's interesting is that when you start getting into these, like, there's also another version of empathy that's not mentioned here. That's called what's it called? Compassionate empathy.
Right. Well, they distinguish sympathy.
Yeah.
As. And that looks pretty thorough with a nice, interesting analysis. It should be in that article too.
So there's also this like version of empathy called compassionate empathy that involves like sympathy, and that I think starts getting kind of messy, because if you're working with people, if you're trying to design with accessibility in mind and like people with disabilities, you don't really want to be sympathetic because you want to see individuals who are different from yourself as being powerful and competent and what have you. And if you start feeling sympathetic towards them, you're losing that, I think. Like you're losing a piece of respect to some extent. Like pitying them. It becomes charitable as opposed to just like good design.
There's a bunch. It looks like there's a bunch of good ones in here.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me to this source. Especially because it's not really in my wheelhouse of knowledge.
It's not in our students' wheelhouse either. So.
It's in mine now. Thank you. I wrote notes. Chromevox Alpha. I know what that is.
Good. That's important. They're way ahead of our students.
I mean, I don't know how to measure it, but I know like why you want it.
You ask us to be assessed nicely. That's how it works.
Yeah, these are things that I don't know anything about. I mean, I use more of Cryptodor's Alpha, to be honest. But
is that for different?
That's for like content for coding.
Oh, right.
I mean, it's the same
more flexible,
thing, right? But it's it's the like, are people measuring what you think you're?
Yeah,
like, does alignment reflect what you think it reflects? But
because Cronbach's is limited in certain ways, like what's I doing with Cronbach's offers? It's like, why are there more measures for this?
Right, isn't it? It's how you know that the things you're measuring that you think are distinct are actually distinct.
Yes, well, right? Sort of the other way, yeah. Like the Cronbach's is how it's an item reliability measure. Like, are all of these things doing the same thing or doing different things, basically? So how well are these, or sorry, how consistent are these?
Yes, that like these 5 questions are consistently measuring
the same. Are they all, whatever they're measuring.
Yeah,
It may not be measuring what you think you're measuring, but
it's
they are consistently, it's basically just correlation. Like, it's just how are the responses to these items correlated with each other?
Yeah.
And there's different ways to